In an ideal world, all teammates would work together flawlessly, succeed together, and enjoy each other's company. Wouldn't that be great? Some coworkers are a ray of sunshine. Others may make you want to scream. Today in our lounge, these coworkers make you want to rip your hair out. Up first, someone who likes to stir the pot. Ex-husband is angry that I am hot and moved on from him. In truth, life is amazing right now. So since my last post, I have dropped enough weight and I am in the best shape of my life. I go to the gym 4 times a week, all the while balancing my job and raising my kids, maintaining my home, along with the pole dancing classes. I'm on my way to becoming a dancer, but for now I am sticking with bartending while doing private dances at the club. I'm making great money. I have even started seeing one of the bouncers at my job. We'll call him Kyle. He's a sweet, caring man who isn't afraid to speak his mind. He's former military. He's really good looking too. Think Jax Teller from Sons of Anarchy. They could be twins. Yes, he knows about my past. Kyle is one of those social media junkies that likes posting just about everything on his Facebook. One night out at dinner, he took a photo of us together and posted it with the caption, "Future wife." As sweet and adorable as that is, I did ask him to take it down as I'm not totally comfortable being on social media just yet, but by then the damage was already done. One of the more cattier girls, Samantha at the club, is mutual friends with my ex, Bill. She knows he is my ex-husband and is aware of the divorce and all of the drama. She is that type of girl that likes to stir up a bunch of crap, then sit back and watch the fallout with a gleeful smile on her face. If she wasn't friends with my boss's wife, he would have fired her a long time ago. She routinely shows up late, gossips about everyone she works with, has drank herself into a stupor more than once and beaten up a client when he didn't pay her more than she thought she deserved. And that was all after I started working there a few months ago. She's incredibly toxic and most of us just avoid her. Long story short, she saved the picture and showed Bill and he went postal. Samantha came into work a couple days ago and informed me that Bill somehow found out about Kyle and he is really upset and has made threats to come by my job. As mad as I was, I told her I didn't care. She horribly feigned sympathy and wished me luck. I informed my boss and Kyle of what Samantha had said. They assured me they would keep a lookout and not to worry. Last night during my shift, I am behind the bar serving drinks like usual. Ever since Samantha told me Bill was making threats to come to my job, I have been overly nervous keeping one eye on the door at all times. Sure enough, he shows up with 2 of his equally douchey friends. It was almost comical how alike they looked. Slicked back hair, polos tucked into dress pants, blazers, and freaking sunglasses at night. I wanted to bury my head into the floor in shame for having seen anything in this man or considered him marriage material. I try to ignore him and go back to serving drinks. He notices me and makes a beeline for the bar with Thing 1 and Thing 2 following right behind him. This is when he is intercepted by my boss, Kyle, and one other bouncer, Greg. I couldn't hear the conversation between them over the music playing, but I could tell from their body language that things were getting heated. It began to draw a crowd pretty fast, and before I knew what happened, Kyle grabbed Bill up by his jacket and proceeded to usher Bill out the door, kicking and screaming while Greg and my boss escorted Thing 1 and 2 out after him. It was pretty anticlimactic, but I'm glad no one was hurt. Mostly. After work was finished, I asked Kyle what was said. He told me Bill was pissed that I couldn't bother to improve myself during our marriage and I had moved on and he wanted me back. When Kyle established that he was the man in my life, Bill called me a whore and a witch and some other colorful words. That was when Kyle grabbed him up and violently threw him out of the club onto his butt in the parking lot and said if he harassed me again, he would F him up. My effing hero. Thing 1 and 2 came out right after and helped Bill to his feet. They got in the car with their pride wounded and peeled out in the parking lot. I'm thankful the situation didn't escalate and so far, Bill hasn't tried showing up to my apartment. I'm hoping he takes Kyle's warning seriously. I'm happily moving on with my life. Of course it would be Samantha to do something like that. She stirs up crap because she's unhappy with her own life. Lives for the drama. The drama just distracts from her own BS. She loves having that gross control over people because her own life is totally out of control. But way to go, Kyle. I hope he continues to treat you well. I think it's natural to not want those pictures up on social media, but I feel like that's a good sign. He's proud of you and the relationship you two share. I'm happy you are in a better place and you've found something you love and you're passionate about. That's all that matters. What are your thoughts? Meanwhile, up next, a guy who thinks he's the king of the castle until there's no castle left. The slow and steady fall of an entitled coworker. People and corporation names will be changed for personal and privacy reasons. For a quick context, I used to work for 5 years at a call center we will name Ultima Thule. Following my induction back in 2016, I was assigned to a campaign with codename Cube, which handles customer and tech support related to a driving app. I remember it because it was really badly managed. People were constantly rotated, and we had at least 4 managers until the end of Cube, which I will explain much later. On to the main story. It is January of 2017. I was assigned to a new work team after my first supervisor and some of my coworkers were fired due to some sketchy fraud. I only survived because I barely interacted with anybody, even my supervisor. Shortly after starting with this new team, I hit it off with 3 coworkers we will name Carl, Andrea, and Brianda. As the 4 of us were together, I see that along came a 5th coworker, about 10 years older than us and looking like Golem. We'll call him Frank. I've seen him around, interacting with my then supervisor until his firing, but he was none of my business at the time. When Frank came to us, he came with an arrogant attitude, demanding us to shut up and to continue doing our respective jobs. I looked at Frank in disgust as I talked my mind. Who do you think you are? He then comes to me, looks me dead in the eye, and says, "You? I know your team was kicked for committing fraud. You do as I say or I'll have HR take you out." I was like, what the F? He is threatening me for no reason and I didn't tell him anything. Frank then leaves while looking at Carl as if he stepped on a dog's fresh turd. Following the whole ordeal, Carl messaged me through HipChat and asked me of what happened with my team. I told him that my team was sacked because of some fraudulent activity regarding the use of that certain app. He then replies that some guys of his team were also kicked out for the same reason and that he was looking at him in disgust because Carl is gay. Andrea then joins the conversation and adds that since he became floor support, Frank has been on the power trip and demanding everybody to pretty much work like robots. Lastly, Brianda joins and mentions that not only he does this to their team, but also barges into the other teams, terrorizing them into silence. Carl then carries on and adds that people tried to report him with their supervisor and even HR, but they were unsuccessful because they were all playing favorites with him. We've continued working and chatting in the meantime. Then, come March 2017, Bruce, then operations manager, resigned, and Michael, an operations manager from another campaign, took over. A lot of changes came along with his advent, and as a result, our team was split up. I was assigned to another team and Frank was changed to morning shift. Ergo, I wouldn't have to put up with his attitude for the time being. Fast forward to early 2018. New changes came within the campaign and you know what it means. Team changes, staff and shift rotation, and the arrival of a new manager, Denise. By this time, both Brianda and Andrea were no longer employees of Ultima Thule. I was teamed up with Carl again, and newcomers Victoria, Astrid, and Gunther were assigned to our crew. But terror also came back with the return of Frank to our shift. It turns out that the new manager got word that Frank has already been doing his thing with the morning shift, and she was not having it. Because of this, on orders from Denise, Frank was demoted to CS agent, returned to the afternoon shift, and was assigned to our team as the only one available for him. Even in his new role, Frank was still behaving like the entitled a-hole I first met back in 2017. But this time, he has become more vindictive and apathetic. Anyhow, he got along with Gunther and their reign of terror continued, at least in our team. Victoria was the only one of us who was on civil terms with Frank at the time, while Astrid worked with him since they were together in the morning shift. During this period, things took a turn for the worse when Victoria was appointed as a new member of floor support. Every time Victoria was trying to do her job, Frank would continue to upstage her, using his longtime knowledge as his excuse. Actually, he would do the same with all the other team leaders. One of these days, I was in a bad mood following a dispute with my supervisor over an unpaid day of work. The final straw came when I returned from lunch and witnessed how Frank called Victoria a useless peasant. This is when I snapped and yelled at him to shut the F up and all the times he made his workplace hell. And if it weren't because he got all of the staff eating on the palm of his hand, I would have personally put you out of your misery. My supervisor saw this, broke the dispute, and Victoria, Frank, and me were called to HR to testify on what happened. Expecting the worst as Frank was still friends with the HR staff, I was eventually called and Denise was there, alongside the HR representative who took the case. After having Frank and Victoria give their versions of the entire incident, and Frank trying to convince them to fire me, I gave my version of what happened. Denise also brought some video evidence that Frank was the jerk here. Both Denise and the HR representative eventually let me go with only a verbal warning on foul language, while Victoria demoted herself to CS agent because of the trauma she suffered. Frank was eventually suspended for a week and sent to the graveyard shift, to which Gunther followed suit. The rest of the period was peaceful for the most part. Fast forward to March of 2020. Me, Carl, and Astrid were still in the fold, but Victoria eventually quit. Frank and Gunther were changed to the afternoon shift again. At this time, we were all little to no contact with them because of all the BS Frank put us through. It goes without saying that the COVID-19 pandemic already hit and we were all on the process of going home office, which means we wouldn't have to have any contact with Frank at all. Time had passed and we were successfully settled into our respective houses. The only contact we would have would be between our team, our supervisor, and our floor supports. But this didn't last much longer, as in June 1st, we received a link for a Microsoft Teams meeting. To keep it short, we were informed that, because of the multiple complications the pandemic has put the campaign through, the client who connected the company with Ultima Thule decided to put an end to Cube. I was offered to continue working in another campaign and actually accepted, but Carl, Gunther, Astrid, and Frank were all dismissed and lost their jobs. And now, November 2022, for the final time skip. I stopped working at Ultima Thule since June of 2021 to join another company. Carl threw a small party at his own place, inviting me and former co-workers Victoria, Andrea, Astrid, and Gunther, and to my surprise, even Denise was invited. While having an alcohol-driven pleasant conversation, it was at this point that Gunther revealed Frank's fate. Gunther told us that he had cut Frank out of his life, months after they were dismissed, as Frank was going obnoxious and blaming it on us for his current situation. He also revealed that Frank had been unable to find another job, unable to continue paying rent, and he was eventually evicted. So Frank is now homeless. That was the last time we ever knew about him. I don't feel bad about his fate, but I don't feel like rejoicing either. In the end, the only victim here was Frank, who did all of this to himself. The community has some opinions. UG starts us off. Well, I guess his axe finally fell. Too bad it took as long as it did and he fell as far as he did, but sheesh. You guys put up with a lot of BS that should have been nipped in the butt ages before, had it not been he was in HR's pocket, it sounds like. Can't believe this is true, thinks. Some make their bed, so they get to sleep in it. COVID and lockdown brought a lot of hidden things to light, one being the large percentage of criminals in our society. When face masks were required, they were so happy because that's how they dressed for work anyway, while they robbed, stole, broke in, attacked people, etc. Now the Karens, narcissists, sociopaths, and other abusive personalities have been coming out of the woodwork in dark shadows. They were there before, but they have, of late, decided not to masquerade as good citizens anymore and just let it all hang out. It has become easier to tell the sheep from the goats, and now the big day approaches. Comeuppances are in order. Soon all we'll see as judgments are given. Nobody will feel sorry for the bad ones. They have had plenty of time to get straight and do right. They just don't want to. Again, Frank is a control freak, loves the feelings he gets when he is in control, and in times like these, it's always possible to go over to the heads of HR. There are services that exist outside of your business that will investigate cases like these, especially if HR isn't doing their job. I find HR works for the company and a lot less for its people. Frank definitely did it all to himself. Unfortunately, they're creatures of their own demise. Did you or do you know a guy like Frank? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for joining us today on rLounge. Before you go, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you have something you want to say regarding today's content, share that with us in the comments below.